We should never allow the government to decide what is acceptable speech and what is unacceptable speech. We should penalize behaviors, not opinions, and not speech. If you start trying to regulate speech, you start trying to regulate thoughts, you start trying to regulate beliefs rather than behaviors, there's no way that you're not going to abridge the constitutional rights of millions of Americans.
Wait a minute. I think the resident's the one that called that one in. If so, yeah, I cleared it to her because she was out there and I told her what I was doing and showed her what was there.
She was the caller. Thanks.
Well, the thing about Peachtree City, when you have time to get down there and back.
before you go crazy and think this video is about Citizens Band radio, I can tell you I've used it since the 1970s, and at that time you did have to have an FCC license, but that has nothing whatsoever to do with what this video is about. I make reference to Citizens Band because I had an experience. I was using my radio in my car yesterday, day before, maybe Friday, and I was hearing a couple of guys talking about COVID, and they were just sitting there nonchalantly talking about how they think, you know, COVID only affects certain age groups, you know, and they were more specifically saying like 30 to 35 age, whatever. And so when the conversation started to kind of like phase off, I kind of gave my own 2 cents. And I told them, I said, isn't it funny that the Democrats have brought up this thing from the beginning saying it was Trump's fault, but at the same time they won't take responsibility for how it started, which was in Wuhan. And I told them, I said, this thing has proven itself to be a biological war event. So one of the CBers came back immediately and said, oh, he's a conspirator. And why I didn't say it, I should have told the guy what a lame excuse for an answer. Communists and Democrats cannot answer why this thing happened. They won't acknowledge the fact that it is an ongoing global event perpetrated for the purpose of one thing, and that is to instigate the New World Order. And tragically, think of how many millions of people around the world have died since coronavirus started in 2020. Right after the election, the communists suppressed your rights to speak about COVID. They suppressed your rights about talking about the election. They still do. But after this guy was saying that, I brought back the fact that so much about history has been shown that it's already repeating itself. That with Adolf Hitler and with Nazi Germany, the Socialists controlled the populations of Europe and several other countries around the world by suppression and restricting their freedoms of speech. I brought that up, and all this one other guy on the CB said was, shut up. In other words, we can't answer these facts, and we're not going to try and respond, so we're just telling you, just like the communists and socialists did after what happened in the election, which is, you can't talk about it. That's not an answer. When you bring up a question and the communists and the socialists don't answer you, that means first they're hiding something, but more importantly, they're not going to admit it. And that's the whole point. They're not going to admit it because they're not in a position that they can answer you with an actual factual answer that would prove one way or the other what's happened. And the communists figure most people don't care what happened and they don't want to know what happened. They just take it as a grain of salt. It happened, it's over, forget it. And that's why when I heard these morons on the CB talking, I realized this represents the core of the liberal, progressive mind in this country, and that is you have to suppress a person's right to bring these things up, and if they do, you silence them. And that's what the government's been doing since 2020 when the election took place. They said you can't talk about the election. You cannot talk about COVID. And these algorithms, artificial intelligences on YouTube, Instagram, on Facebook, when you said these things, just said them, the algorithms took the video down immediately, and they still do. And you think, after this period of time, for 2 years, somebody should have been brought up on charges of violating our First Amendment rights. Then you say, there is no First Amendment. There is no Second Amendment about bearing arms, and that's why they're doing what they're doing. Because they're going to get rid of the Constitution if it's not already been removed. And that includes your rights as American citizens. Now, when they let Mexicans come across the border now, totally unhindered, and they let them come here and they give them free benefits and everything else at your expense, then you ask, why aren't people outraged? Why aren't they rising up or doing something? See, then the socialists say, oh, you're trying to create an inciting situation. Then they target you again. They say, you can't talk about that. You can't say that. So the idiocy of what happened and how critical race theory has done its job through colleges, through universities, through the actual schoolroom in the past 20, 30 years, people now have no mentality to question what happened. And that's why when I was on the radio trying to bring these things up, they were sitting there telling me, shut up, don't talk about this. And the lame answer you get from them is like, forget it, we're not going to talk about this. You know, oh, you're just a conspirator. That's what they said after Trump was thrown out of office, kicked out by the manipulation of our whole system. And they won't even admit that. They'll just say, oh, you're a conspirator. And I'm like, that's a lame answer. You're not answering the question people are bringing up about these things because you know there is no answer. You know that's what happened. All you want to do is suppress a person's right to say it or to bring it up. And I would say to everybody, don't vote. Don't vote anymore because they've proven there is no legitimacy and there is no transparency in our elections anymore. If you say, oh no, that's not possible, it's like, I just told you in the last 2 years of what they've done to suppress a person's right to even say these things or to talk about it. And the communists today are just like, they're not going to listen to you. Forget it. You're not going to get through to anybody because we've already got them brainwashed. We got them thinking the way we want them to. And this is just a casual conversation I was having on Citizen Band the other day. And they're sitting there talking about how, oh, isn't it great? COVID's now under control. Isn't it great? All the rest of the stuff. And it's like, don't you have a mentality to question why it happened in the first place? No. None of them have a question because in their minds, let the government take care of it. Let the government control my life. Let them control my money and all the rest of my family and all the rest. That's socialism because that's what they want. And that's why so many people after the election, most of them just kind of like said, let's get back to work, let's do whatever we were doing beforehand. They didn't care. All they wanted to do was just forget about everything and just go on with whatever they wanted to do. So anyway, I told the guys on the CB radio, one of the last couple of comments, I said, well, if you guys have swastikas in your car or in your home, I'd say put them up on your flagpole because you are adhering to Nazi Germany and what they did back in the 1930s. In the 1930s, Nazi Germany was called the Democratic Nationalist Party of Germany. That's what Adolf Hitler ran under in the first years as the rising military leader of Germany, and then he took over as chancellor after the Nazis started World War II, and they were already in power. And you think critical race theory is blocking that information out of schools, so now kids don't learn anything about history because critical race theory teaches them we're not going to remember the past. We're not going to remember anything about what happened in World War II. We're just going to teach you to believe in one philosophy now. And that's what the United Nations Constitution says. We are all animals. We are all equal. That's it. There is no other stipulation of your life. You are a global citizen. Who kept saying that during the 8 years as president? Barack Hussein Obama said that. And he adhered to it. He pushed it. So that's the point of the video, really, is just to bring out what I heard on an average radio conversation and how this represents really all this country. They don't care. You try and bring it up or you try to talk about it, and they're so lame, they don't have an answer, so they just attack you. Or they suppress it and they don't answer. And that's what happened on my conversation on CB. They didn't have an answer, and that's more or less what they're trained to tell people. If you get a question you can't answer, you just ignore them. That's what the Socialist Democrats do all the time whenever somebody tries to bring up something that they don't want to talk about. But they'll sure attack Trump every single moment. Boom, boom. And you think, well, if you're rational, you should be asking yourself, why didn't they bring up Biden on charges of articles of impeachment about what happened in Afghanistan, about him closing down the energy resources America had, and I'm talking about the Keystone Pipeline. He shut that off. He turned it off. And then people say, well, we don't have any other resources for gas. We're just going to have to go to electricity. Well, why did he shut it off? Because as a socialist, he's adhering to the same philosophy that Chavez had when he ran Venezuela. And guess who loved Chavez? Barack Obama. So now the United States is in almost hyperinflation. The next stage, of course, as I've said before, is going to be a recession. We are 7 years from the 100th anniversary of the Great Depression, which took place all over the United States. And if you don't think soup kitchens can't happen, you just keep watching. Because when the economy of the country collapses, it's not going to affect just the United States. It's going to be a domino effect. It's going to hit every other nation in the world. Because they all depend on the United States U.S. currency. Our Federal Reserve is what keeps them operating. And it's not true, I would think, about the Middle East, because they have gold denier. They got their own currency, they got their own backing, so they don't have to worry about that. But I would say that nobody in the world has ever attacked the Muslims for their beliefs. They do attack Christians because they don't agree with them. But you don't have a Christian going out and shooting people down like what happened on 9/11 or blowing up airplanes. But see, they don't have a problem with Islam. All they have a problem with is Christianity, Jesus Christ, because they think, oh, you guys are the actual people who perpetrated 9/11 or whatever their ideology. So if you think, oh, that's stupid, it's like, yeah, that's what's happening in this country and all over the world. They don't want to realize, they don't want to take responsibility and say this is wrong, so they ignore it, and they try, and they do suppress everybody's freedom of speech to say anything like that to their face or otherwise. And with Citizens Band, I just, just a casual conversation proved to me these people are brainwashed. All of the liberals are brainwashed, or the progressives, because when it happened, when they did what they did, they were saying, we don't care what happens in this country anymore. We want the socialists to control us and to control our lives. And that's exactly what they did. Before I turned the radio off, I just simply said, you guys are communists, because that's the philosophy you adhere to. You don't want freedom, and you certainly would not stand up as patriots and protect your family or your country if and when the military starts showing up at your house saying, we got to take your gun, we can't trust you to have a firearm anymore. And that's martial law. And that's still going to happen. It's going to happen, I don't know when, but it will happen soon. And I'm just like all the rest of you, right? I just think it isn't going to get better. The economy isn't definitely going to get better, because this is all part of their plan. And if you don't know or haven't ever used Citizens Band, I would get up there once in a while, if you can, on a radio, listen to what they're saying. Because they adhere to the same bull that Barack Obama kept telling Joe the plumber. I'm going to take everything you own, I'm going to give it to who I say should have it, and that's the end of it. And they call me a conspirator. When Barack Obama said it to Joe the plumber, they're saying, I'm a conspirator because I'm bringing it up. I said it. That's what they said on the CB radio about the fact COVID is not an accident. It is not some random virus. This thing was manipulated, perpetrated, and carried out. And the United States to this day is still financing the Wuhan labs. They're doing all the research they were doing before it happened. The media is never going to tell the public that, because they're controlled by the socialists, by the Democrats. And now today you just see, look, it's like people are just kind of like wandering around like like cattle. They have no mentality, have no desire to want to get things fixed. That's what really needs to happen. We need to fix what the socialists, what the communists did in this country. But you can't, because if the government's behind it, then nothing you do will change it. Because voting is not legit, it is not transparent. There's nothing about voting anymore that will ever prove to anybody who saw what happened in 2020 that there's any legitimacy in our election systems or anything else. And the only people that's going to go are the Democrats and the communists themselves, because they want socialism. They want communism. They want to be controlled. They want the government itself to take over everything. So they say, don't care, let them do it, take it away from us. And a patriot is somebody who existed even at the time of 1776, when the Minutemen were out there waiting for any kind of an attack by the British. They were out there to fight for freedom for America. They would not do that in this country in a second. Because I say, there are patriots, there are so few of them. When they saw what happened during the January 6th protests, and the military out there saying, you are going to be blown away if you come back here for the inauguration, and that's why nobody came back, that means your freedom and your rights as an American citizen are gone. And now you don't have anything anymore. And that's proof positive to me. Nothing more to say about it. They showed it, they proved it, and now you got these ignoramuses who just like pretend it ain't like that. And it's like, you're just denying it. You're refusing to admit it to yourself. You're lying to yourself because you think, I don't believe it, then I can force other people not to believe it. You think, oh, that's stupid. No, that ain't stupid, because that's what they're thinking, and that's what critical race theory has taught them ever since they were in kindergarten. Ever since they started in first grade, those kids have been taught this ideology that everybody can be equal. All you got to do is just give up everything you have and give it to everybody else. That's what the socialists, that's what the communists are doing. So I just hope and pray that people will stand up for themselves when they start showing up, taking your gun out of your home and say you can't have a gun because it ain't helping you. Or if they say you are now unable to have private ownership of any property you might have, and they say under the state, under parliamentary procedure, you have nothing. The state owns everything you own or did own. That is part of what communism is about, and that's what the democratic socialists are pushing. That's why they do the stuff they do, and nobody can speak out or do anything about it. So I say, if you're a patriot, you better stand up for yourself when the time comes, and not let the communists and the socialists tell you just comply and forget about it. Don't be a patriot. Don't say you want freedom in this country anymore, because there's nothing like that in existence. There's nothing anymore. That's what they'll tell you. So, do something.
شرا، وصار العيش في دنياك مرا، فلا تجزع لحالك بل تذكر، فكم أمضيت في الخيرات عمرا، وإن ضاقت عليك الأرض يوما وبت تئن من دنياك قهرا، فرب الكون ما أبكاك إلا لتعلم أن بعد العسر يسرا. وإن جار الزمان عليك فاصبر، وسل مولاك توفيقا وأجرا، لعل الله أن يجزيك خيرا ويملأ قلبك المكسور صبرا. ومد يديك للرحمن دوما، فربك لن يرد يديك صفرا.
From Amram and Carey Films comes this true and tragic story of a small 3.5-year-old boy who lived in Aleppo, Syria. His name is Amram Daknish. He was seen one night in an ambulance with blood on his head. His family survived the worst night of their lives when Russian airstrikes destroyed his neighborhood. The world saw him, cried for him, remembers him today. The famous director, George Lucas, brings this story to life in a way you will never forget because it really happened. Rated PG-13.
This is Cat Dog!
I saw our picture on your shirt and wanted to say, we love you. Be safe in Aleppo now.
مرحبا، اسمي عمران دقنيش. كان عمري 3 سنين ونص لما ضربوا الغارات الجوية الروسية على حلب. أكيد شفتوني هديك الليلة في سيارة الإسعاف يوم 17/8/2016، واليوم أنا أفضل بكتير. أنا صورت هذا الفيديو عشان أسأل عيلتي شو اسم أمي. إذا ممكن أي شخص يساعدني أنا بقدره كتير. من فضلكم أروني شخص أحضنه زي أبويا محمد الخير، أبو علي، أخواتي رؤى وتقي وعبد الله. أنا لسه ما بعرف اسم أمي، رجاء ساعدوني في معرفته. أحب كل من يهتم بي وما زال يريد أن يعرف كيف هي عائلتي في حلب. لن أنسى أبدا لطفكم. مع السلامة.